You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Welcome back to Last Call. I'm Scott Rosenbaum.
And I'm Erica Ducey.
Now, Erica, I didn't have the opportunity to make it to the BevNET live conference this year, but I know that you did. Can you tell me a little bit about what went on there?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a very informative event. So for people who aren't familiar with BevNET Live, it's this event and really the publication that they cover really all drinks categories: alcohol, functional, THC, energy, better for you sodas, protein drinks, you name it. There were products there that crossed so many different categories in ways that I hadn't seen before, that I was like floored by the creativity. And the opportunity to sample them all in one place was pretty amazing.
So it's kind of like a playground or festival for beverage nerds, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. There was copious sampling and super obsessed founders and fans. And BevNet did a really phenomenal job with the programming at this event. It was really seamless, highly curated, and designed to offer a lot of value for early stage brands, which is their core audience for this particular event.
Yeah, I was looking at a schedule and it was like back to back to back, just action packed. Take me, if you will, inside what the event was like. How did it kick off?
Yeah, so the first day started with something called Beverage School. That's basically a crash course for new founders. So they broke down how the drinks industry works: distribution models, retail review cycles, margin expectations. There were also deep dives into FDA compliance and financing, especially the pitfalls of convertible notes and vague equity agreements.
Ooh, it sounds like there's more to that. And any particular horror stories?
Yeah, there was one that I really found cringy. The speaker in this particular session, who was a corporate lawyer, he shared a cautionary tale that everyone should heed. So, a food brand, they gave their CEO, quote unquote, up to 50% equity in a one-page contract years prior. So there was no vesting schedule, there was no structure to the deal. And several years later, when the brand goes into fundraising mode, an investor catches this during the due diligence process. So, of course, the brand tries to get the ex-CEO to release them from the contract. But, as you might expect, the ex-CEO is like, hey, I've got a valid claim to half of this company. So the company had to pay an unexpected mid-six-figure settlement just to clean this mess up.
Oof. I mean, I'm all for short contracts and simplicity, but that seems to be overkill.
Totally. The lesson learned here: always be precise, no percentages, only share counts, and always get legal counsel before signing those contracts.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so beverage school kind of set the tone. What else stood out to you about the conference?
Yeah, one of the biggest value adds to this conference is the one-on-one retailer meetings. So brands could sign up to sit down with buyers from Whole Foods, HEB, Top 10 Liquors, Stop and Shop. And that kind of access is rare, as you know. And honestly, it's truly invaluable for founders trying to break into retail.
Yeah, absolutely. Categorically, you mentioned there was a ton of buzz around functional beverages. This kind of cross between categories we might not have seen before. What was that like?
Yeah, definitely. Functional drinks, I think, really across the landscape of all drinks categories, it is on fire. Especially those with benefits like hydration, immunity, digestion, and energy. These are all coming up in these kind of like emerging channels, and growing in popularity. Like, I actually am so blown away by some of the caffeine containing products that I was hearing about, which are like caffeine paste in a tube, caffeine powder packs, like all of these things that I was like, these were not even on my radar. Along with caffeine and energy, longevity came up again and again. And there was a lot of discussion around, especially in the data presentations, around how those GLP-1 medications like Ozempic are starting to have an impact in the CPG space because they're changing hydration and nutrition habits. So that's pushing up demand for high protein, low sugar drinks.
So with that, like zooming out a bit, what was the takeaway? What does some of the lessons mean for brands that are new and trying to break into the market right now?
Yeah, I'd say, you need three things: a differentiated benefit, right? A smart pricing strategy, and an authentic story that really resonates with consumers. So the brands that are winning, they're also meeting people where they are. They're meeting people on the go and online, in the channels where they want to shop. And there's also an increase, like I mentioned, with, functional powder sticks or ready to mix formats. It's not just the RTDs in a can anymore.
So, like, it sounds to me that there's some customization at the consumer end. There's some personalization at play here. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, in a lot of the presentations, people talked about consumers wanting to build their own drinks, right? Mix their own flavors and use formats that work for their lifestyles. I was interested in hearing from Sally Lyons Wyatt from Circana about premiumization trends that she's seeing across all drinks categories. So she presented data showing that premiumization is accelerating in both alcohol and non alcohol categories, especially in the no and low alcohol space. So her message was that there's still headroom there to push further into premium.
All right. So, wrapping it up, your top three takeaways from BevNet Live this year?
Yes, I would say one, functional and low and no alcohol drinks are no longer niche. They're table stakes. So, if your brand doesn't offer some type of benefit, you run the risk of becoming invisible. That's becoming expected. Two, I would say, the Circana data, premiumization still works. It's accelerating in some areas, but don't forget that it needs to be backed by product education and strong social proof. That was apparent in a lot of the case studies about brands that were gaining traction. And three, getting on shelves isn't enough anymore. The brands that are winning are owning TikTok, they're activating influencers, and they're creating cultural moments.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It sounds like a great conference, and I hope to join you next year.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so much more to unpack here. We're going to be diving into some of these trends in a deeper way in upcoming episodes.
Well, that is a wrap for this week. Thank you for joining us on Business of Drinks. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you are watching or listening, and tap that notification button so that you will be the first to know when a new episode drops. And please help us spread the word. Click those star ratings and share on socials. It really does help us find new listeners. Finally, if there's something that you'd like to cover on the podcast, please tell us. We are always listening. You can reach us at podcast@businessofdrinks.com or reach out to us via our Instagram or LinkedIn pages. We want to hear from you, and we really do respond to messages. With that, we will see you next time.